Glad tidings, the rapscallions. It's me, Mucky Mitch. Alright, so it's time for, what is it, episode 8, episode 9? I forgot, I've lost count, I've been doing it ages now. So it's episode, I think it's episode 9, so it's episode 9 of It's Okay to Suck and Start Again. And today, you might feel that I'm in a very, very different surrounding. I'm in a very, very different area. I'm in something called the Sunshine, next to a tree. Well, I'm in the shade actually, because I've been to the gym this morning and I absolutely sweated my arse off. So I thought I'd come to the park. I got my book out and I've been sat under the tree, and I thought, you know what would be really, really, really good is if I did It's Okay to Suck and Start Again from the park. And yeah, it's nice, very tranquil. I mean, you can probably hear the traffic just over yonder. But I've been thinking about this because obviously sort of my major driving thing at the moment is to look to move over to Australia. Now, it's this kind of weather that makes me feel like I wouldn't really want to move to Australia if we had more weather like this. Now, don't get me wrong, the UK is definitely not built for this heat, because a lot of people will moan about it and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's nice to sort of have a little bit of a blue sky, and I just feel like it makes everything feel all that little bit more, just feels a little bit better, doesn't it? Like life feels a little bit better. And I think that's the thing about when people ask me why I want to move to Australia and what, you know, what's the draw, and it's not necessarily, you know, I can probably have the same life I'm having here, you know, for the same price as I'm paying. I'm still gonna have to live in a house share, but the thing is, I'll be able to live closer to the beach, and I'm looking to live somewhere that's, you know, all around, have like the weather all year round, where we just get pockets of sunshine and whatnot here. So, you know, we have very little in the realms of consistent weather in the UK. Now, I mean, I might say that and we might end up having a magnificent summer and it might try and talk me out of it, but at the minute there's not a great deal to report. I'm still waiting on Trades Recognition Australia to get back to me, which is obviously it's kind of frustrating, but I also have to accept that it's only 3 and a bit weeks since I decided that I'm going to go back to Australia, or at least I'm going to attempt to it, and I'm going to keep going for it. But then, you know, like last night and the night before and the night before that, it was really, really warm in my bedroom. I've really struggled to sleep. I think I've had about 4 hours sleep each night. You know, I'm like under, and I'm like, well, am I built for this heat? Could I live in Australia again? So, but it's different because like the UK houses are completely built differently. We're completely built to retain heat, so that makes it sort of like very difficult. And I live on the ground floor, so I can't have my windows open. I can't even really just open them on like the lock, because I live right next to a main road. Living next to a main road, obviously I've got lots of traffic noise and stuff like that, and I'm very, very easily aggravated, especially in the sunshine. So obviously I'll be looking for somewhere that's not next to a main road, and I can, but yeah, so I mean, on the other side of the coin, it has motivated me to do different things, like with the gym. You know, it's kicked me into gear with my diet and stuff like that, because I want to sort of lose some weight, and it's not necessarily because of any other reason. I don't feel social pressure or anything like that. It's just how I feel. It's up for my self-confidence and stuff like that. I'm gone are the days where I used to go out on the pole and, you know, look for a potential partner, and I had to look this way and I had to look that way. I literally probably look exactly the same every day. But, you know, it's making me feel a little like, I also think the weather sort of helps substantially as well. It motivates me much further. You know, with a little bit of sunshine and a plan, I feel like a very, very different person at the moment. I feel I feel buoyed. I've also been making loads of music. I've been writing loads of lyrics recently, so I have not really posted any music on the Mucky Mitts page on YouTube. I have got a SoundCloud now though, so if you do want to check it out, that like it's Mucky Mitts Filthy Business SoundCloud. So I've got a couple, almost a couple of hours music. I've just put a full album's worth of music on there. Now, I'm not going to tell you fibs. I've been aided by AI. Now, I'm going to sort of like be very, very honest with you, because I feel like sometimes honesty is the best policy, but like some people look at this differently, and at the end of the day, I don't really care what people think. So it's something I want to do, and I will use any means necessary to do it. So basically, for the last 2 weeks, I think I've written predominantly that. Now, I'm not obviously a seasoned songwriter, so I'm sort of learning on the fly, and I'm basically learning at the moment. I've kind of done like new soul, psychedelic soul, and I've sort of like, I've written a first album which I've posted. Now I've like started working, I've pretty much done the second album, which is the one after, and it's kind of biographical. I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but basically it's a bit of an autobiography. So the first one is from a relationship that and my first trip to Australia. So it's the first sort of like, the first chapter is basically of me moving to Australia, you know, meeting my ex-girlfriend there, and obviously sort of how that kind of the relationship deteriorated and stuff like that. And the thing is, you know, people might say, oh well, that's 16 years ago, well, that's a long time ago to be writing an album about an ex-girlfriend. Well, the thing is, she's my last breakup, and after that I sort of went on a bit of a, you know, I went on a bit of a frenzy of sort of like being free and trying to be normal, I guess, you know, trying to be a round peg in a square hole when in reality it's like I'm not that way. Do you know what I mean? I don't think relationships are for me. I kind of like my own space. I think having to consider somebody else, but I was for a time very, 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 very much besotted with this individual, and you know, we came to a sticky end. I've got an estranged son that's you know, part of why things were so difficult when we broke up, and I was obviously dealing with addiction and alcohol issues and things like that, and I just couldn't be the man that I really wanted to be for her. And after we broke up, I worked very, very hard, I think, like basically to try and change and become somebody else, you know, and I think I was slightly disillusioned with the idea that maybe we could potentially get back together, you know. And now, you know, I think like it's not until years gone by I've looked back and gone, do you know what, everything that happened was pretty much my own doing. And I'm very, very aware that you've got to take accountability sometimes, and unfortunately that the accountability doesn't always come straight away, and for some people that never ever comes. But I learned a very hard lesson, and I do hope that one day, you know, in years to come, I do get to have a relationship with my son. And a lot of people, well, you know, this, that and the other about, you know, but if you understand how any man who has gone through the family court system, and I know guys who live in the same town, the same place as their own children, and they still don't have a relationship with the children, not because they don't want to, just because the family courts make it very, very hard and very, very difficult. And unfortunately it is getting better, but we're talking about something that happened a long, long time ago. So I hope that one day, I mean, I don't know if he's ever looked at my social media or anything, he's probably old enough to do that now, so and I do, you know, I do, it haunts me every day. I don't have many regrets, but it haunts me every day. And I suppose I wrote this album due to the fact that it's been quite cathartic. It's been quite I've searched my soul, and I've tried to be honest within that album as well. And maybe I take more blame than I should, but sometimes taking the accountability for the things that you've done and accepting that you maybe were the main bad guy character in the business, in that. So, I've made peace with that, and I suppose the issue there is not being able to meet up with that person, that broke up. And if this resonates with anyone, I'd really like to speak to you about it. But again, beating a 20-year drink issue, and not only that, then going and doing a degree in psychology, which has probably been like more like a paint by numbers counselling session for me. And I think that's, as much as I've read a lot of self-help books, I think actually reading psychology, working within youth work, it does give you a really big insight. And again, I'm not the same person as I was, but unfortunately that person, or maybe hold on to the fact that you were that person, and maybe they'll never forgive you, or maybe they'll never want to have anything to do with you, and that's okay. I understand that. And I suppose writing this first album's worth of music was sort of like me kind of getting it all out, that the things that I would have liked to have said, because we never really had a conversation. We never really had closure. Well, I never had closure. I don't know if she did. I think, and again, I put my hands up. So that's the first album, and then the second album is sort of the aftermath of getting sober, or the upturn, and understanding that it's a little bit of a different theme. It's like more of a Latin soul, sort of dark gothic type, sort of Santana, if you like, quite hypnotic, if you like. A lot of foundations in sort of like the occult and the dark magic, talking about selling my soul, and how, or not selling my soul, or trying to be a more spiritual an understanding person, how the temptation, especially on a day like today where the sun's out, and once upon a time it's bank holiday Monday, which means I would have just been out all weekend on the drink. But obviously now I work Saturday, Sunday, and once upon a time working on a Sunday would really have pissed me off. But now I just do it because I enjoy doing it. I actually enjoy working by myself in the shop. I've got that sort of little bit of space. A lot of my customers like that as well, so it's quite nice to have that. But again, like I say, it's sort of the second album is, and now I'm working on a third set of a third album, which is going to be like more of a prequel. So altogether, like a trilogy of, sort of pre this relationship, post relationship, and then obviously the during, and how things fell apart, and accepting it. So it's quite good, I think. In a way, some people write autobiographies, and I think this is quite like an autobiography, and like I say, I'm trying to be as honest in it as I can, and maybe that'll come back to bite me on the bum, who knows. But again, it also sits in with the theme of it's okay to suck and start again, because it sort of speaks out of my failings and the things that I've actually done wrong. So yeah, I think that's basically it today, really. Like I say, I've not got anything to really report on the quest to go back to Australia, and I think I do have these little doubts. I keep sort of going round in my head whether that's the best thing to do, moving forward. But I also have very few regrets. Obviously the one that I've just mentioned is massive, and it does haunt me, and so it makes me a little bit more tentative towards the idea of that happening again. Just being sat there with this, and I do sort of feel like I've run around and I've put together some complacent time in living where I am now. I've lived in the same place for 4 years, which is just monumental for me, and the fact that I've been in the UK now between two different places, sort of living in Belfast and now living like in the, living in Cheshire. I've done like a span of like 7 years, so I think it's time to sort of like dust off the suitcase and start looking at moving forward, and maybe having a contingency plan as well. The idea of Australia not working out for whatever reason, maybe I won't get the right points, maybe I won't be granted a visa, so there has to be somewhat of a backup plan. But if all else fails, I can at least scratch it off. I can know that, like, basically, well, I've done what I've done. I've tried to make it work. I've tried to, like, I've made a constructive and considered effort to try and go back to Australia. And if the bureaucracy and the things that everything has its place in the world, I think, and what's meant to be will always be meant to be, and nothing that's meant for you will pass you by. So yeah, that's where I'm at it. So I'm just going to keep on plugging away, and hopefully I'll hear something back from the trades recognition at Australia. Ideally, I would like to sort of have had the opportunity to apply for that by the end of May, because it takes about 15 weeks to come through, which will take us through to roughly sort of September, won't it? So September, and then I'm going to start looking at doing my English test. I'm hoping I don't have to do that, because somebody was telling me the other day that, like, if you've got a degree, then you might bypass the English test. So I don't know whether that'll be the thing. And maybe maybe the university is conspiring towards these things, sort of holding me back a little bit to get things over the line and things. I don't actually know. I think what I'll have to look into is whether I actually can maybe I can even apply just before I turn 45, which will obviously sort of help me financially and stuff like that, because I can put the money together for it as well. So on that note, I love you and leave you. Thank you for joining me. If you've watched all this, please do subscribe. Do consider subscribing, and if you don't, then you don't. But if you do want to follow the journey of what I'm doing at the moment, and I would love to have you here, building a nice community and whatnot. So you take care. Toodle pip, toodaloo, goodbye.